Of the fundraising team for Mitt Romney in the state of Florida is the chief executive of this, Full Sail University. And the reason I said the Mitt Romney Campaign Florida fundraising co-chair is the chief executive of Full Sail University and not, say, the president of the school is because Full Sail University is a business. It is a for-profit institution. And when Mitt Romney gets asked policy questions about higher education, he often brings up for-profit colleges and as his proposed solution. Specifically, he often brings up Full Sail University. Is that a specific school? That it happens to be run by his fundraising co-chair.
I was at a place in Florida called Full Sail University. They provide they're a four-year degree for people in the entertainment world, production, media, broadcast, and so forth. And they hold down the cost of their education by recognizing they're competing.
Full Sail University, cited by Mr. Romney, is an example of how to hold down the cost of education. It costs $81,000 to do a 21-month program in video game art at Full Sail University. That's what Mitt Romney says is going to save America from high education costs. But it is run by Mr. Romney's Florida fundraising co-chair, so that part of its finances is definitely looking good for America. Beyond just the CEO being a major Romney fundraiser, it should also be noted that Full Sail University is technically owned by a private equity fund. And the chairman of the private equity fund is also a major Mitt Romney donor. When the New York Times reported in this front page story earlier this year on Mr. Romney's financial ties to the for-profit college industry that he promotes as a candidate, they also noted that for that video game art degree program, the one that costs $81,000, the on-time graduation rate is 14%. The total graduation rate is only 38%. But whether or not you actually graduate, the median debt taken on by students to pay for that program is $59,000. This is a lot of things, but a solution to the high cost of higher education, it is not one of those things. Here's another detail. In June of this year, just a couple of months ago, the website gibill.com had to be handed over to the federal government. It turns out that gibill.com had been bought by a marketing company in California. It looked like an official government portal, maybe even a military website where you might go to figure out how to apply for and use your GI Bill benefits if you are a veteran. But really, this marketing firm that owned gibill.com was just capturing the data that unsuspecting veterans entered into that website looking for official help, and then they were selling that data to for-profit colleges. The marketing company settled in an agreement with multiple states. They paid a multi-million-dollar fine, and they agreed to hand over the website. So now when you go to gibill.com, it kicks you over eventually to the real VA website about your real benefits, which should not result in a million high-pressure tactic phone calls from for-profit universities trying to get you to use up all your benefits, paying for something like an $81,000 video game art program that has a 14% graduation rate. Mitt Romney as a presidential candidate is not just tied to Full Sail University, though. He has generally been a big proponent of this industry. He's going to be speaking at another for-profit college this weekend in North Carolina. And Mr. Romney plating his trough with this industry, and doing so very aggressively, has had the helpful political effect of putting a real spotlight on this incredibly profitable industry and how much we are all paying them to become so profitable. This past month, Tom Harkin and the Education Committee in the Senate released a report on the for-profit college industry that was the product of a 2-year investigation. The report was not good.
For-profit colleges charge exorbitant tuition and often provide an inferior education while experiencing sky-high dropout rates. How are they able to recruit a steady stream of new students? The answer is that for-profit colleges are what I would call a marketing machine.
Whether or not you graduate, whether or not your degree is worth anything in terms of getting you a job, perhaps in the video game art field, whether or not you are able to ever repay the loans that you took out to be able to pay for these expensive programs, the business model of the for-profit school industry is to market to you aggressively, to get you to sign up, to then get you to take out loans to pay your tuition to the school, and then to cash those loan checks. They get paid, and you owe the money to whoever gave you the loan. And more often than not, the entity that gave you the loan is the federal government. In the 2009 school year, for-profit schools got paid $32 billion in federal money. 1 out of every $4 the Education Department put out in student aid went to a for-profit school. This is students taking out federally supported student loans to pay these schools. The reason we do that is because there's supposed to be a national public interest in helping Americans get a valuable college education. But the more loans a student can take out, the more money these students can potentially soak out of them. The more eligible you are as a student for loans, the more beautiful you are as a marketing target for these schools. And so if you are a post-9/11 veteran, eligible for the post-9/11 GI Bill, for these schools, you are a very, very beautiful target indeed. Quote, since the post-9/11 GI Bill took effect almost exactly 3 years ago right now, 8 of the 10 colleges collecting the most money from the new GI Bill, 8 of the 10 have been for-profit schools. As taxpayers, we are paying for veterans' higher education. That's what the GI Bill means. We have a national interest in doing that. And these for-profit schools are marketing aggressively to veterans so that our federal taxpayer money is going to them, to the for-profit schools. It's $4,600 to pay for a veteran to go to public school. It's more than $10,000 for that same veteran to go to a for-profit school. And at that for-profit school, what we get for our extra money is a lower graduation rate and a higher student loan default rate and a whole lot of profit to make sure these marketing machines are very, very, very well politically connected. Joining us now is Tom Tarantino. He's the Chief Policy Officer for Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, which, full disclosure, is a nonpartisan organization that I personally support. Mr. Tarantino is an Iraq War vet who served 10 years in the U.S. Army. Tom, thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
Is it your experience as a veteran and working with vets at IAVA that post-9/11 veterans are specifically being targeted by for-profit schools?
They're absolutely being targeted by for-profit schools, and this is largely because of regulatory loopholes that were created before the GI Bill actually existed that classify the GI Bill as private funding. We actually have controls on for-profit schools so that they don't abuse the system, so they actually have some element of free market control that says we can have 90% of your revenue can come from the federal government, but 10% actually has to come from customers who want to buy your product. In terms of business, it's kind of the best deal going. But because of a loophole, that 10%, the GI Bill falls in that 10% of private dollars. And so do DoD tuition assistance benefits, and so do benefits for military spouses. So that means for every veteran or military member that a for-profit school can recruit, that's 9 more people on federal financial aid, equaling about $125,000 in new revenue per veteran. That is a huge incentive to line their pockets with benefits instead of providing the service that they're supposed to be providing.
In terms of the service that they are providing, though, I mean, the rejoinder from these schools is that veterans are signing up in hugely disproportionate numbers for for-profit schools because it is a good deal, because it's a good way to get an education, because it meets the needs of military families and the constraints imposed by being a veteran or by being in the military. What about that argument from them?
Well, there is a little bit of something to that, but the reality is when 40% of all of your revenue is spent on marketing and recruiting, and it's laser targeted at the military and at veterans benefits. When I was a young officer and I was getting my in-brief on my education benefits, it wasn't telling me about how much I could use or where could I go to college. It was a for-profit school marketing directly to me saying I can go get this master's degree from this for-profit college. They have unprecedented access. And so it's very hard for veterans to make a determination as to what schools they can go to. I can find out how much every single piece of sushi within 10 miles of me costs using my phone, but I have no way to figure out how to compare schools. There is no Yelp for higher education, and that lack of transparency is causing problems with veterans who are looking around and trying to figure out what schools best fit their needs. Sometimes it is an online college. There actually are very good for-profit colleges, but they're being drowned out by these large behemoths that are just looking to line their pockets with benefits.
Well, President Obama signed an executive order back in April that was aimed at least part of this problem. It was aimed at protecting vets and veterans' families from deceptive recruiting, overly aggressive recruiting by these schools. Did that help at all?
I think it is going to help. It actually did 3 very important things. It actually told all schools that they need to report some basic consumer information metrics. There's a lot of information coming out of the Department of Education, but it's really hard to sift through, and it actually doesn't help consumers very much. It also trademarks the phrase GI Bill, so that these marketing websites and for-profit schools who want to create these deceptive marketing websites, they can't use the phrase GI Bill. That's actually going to be copyrighted protected. And most importantly, it allows veterans who are scammed by for-profit schools some way to not just complain, but to actually get some sort of redress.
Tom Tarantino, Chief Policy Officer for IAVA, Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. Tom, thanks for helping us understand this tonight. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
Thank you. Okay, apologize and retract. Those are two things that perpetrators of irresponsible news stories almost never do. I have a prime candidate for both of those things. Next.